You're not responsible for their well-being anymore. I need you to focus on yourself. I need you to focus on taking care of yourself, which I know is hard to do because you probably put yourself last. But think of that thing where you go on airplanes and they say, put on your oxygen mask. Well, that's what we're talking about here. Welcome to Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind. I am Corey Shapiro. I'm helping you become more creative, less reactive in your divorce. By day, I'm a divorce attorney in New York City. Also wrote my book, Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind, which is available on Amazon and in audio form on Audible and Spotify. And today we're talking about boundaries. This is your divorce-based safe space. This is so important. We're going to be talking about physical boundaries. We're going to talk about digital boundaries. But before we do that, I want to talk about a foundational concept that I see so much of a problem with my practice, with my clients, maybe even with me at times, which is this idea of codependency. In the beginning, if your identity is so wrapped up with the other side and you're in love and everything's positive, that can be very fulfilling. But over time, if you have a negative, toxic relationship, and you probably do if you're here, then it's like you're trying to fill up a bucket of water with a hole. And as much as you fill the bucket, you're never getting a full bucket. It just keeps on emptying. So the concept I want you to understand is something so hard to hear, especially if you've been a caretaker for so long, which is you're not responsible for their well-being anymore. You're not responsible for their well-being anymore. I need you to focus on yourself. I need you to focus on taking care of yourself, which I know is hard to do because you probably put yourself last. But think of that thing where you go on airplanes and they say, put on your oxygen mask. Well, that's what we're talking about here. You can also think of it like interest and compound interest. But if you have a debt and you have compound interest, it's going down negatively. So you're building up this emotional debt, which is just going to create hostility, bitterness, and hollowness. So I really want you to work on that. That's the foundational concept. Okay, let's get into physical boundaries. The first thing you have to understand is it's pretty straightforward if you don't have children. Hopefully you can separate. That would be wonderful. If you have kids, it gets a little bit more complicated. And there's this transition period. I don't know how long it will last. It could last, a few weeks to a few months, even longer. It could be years. But you need to come up with a parenting plan. That is the key start. And the problem is someone who's usually not that involved with the kids wants, full involvement, and they want 50-50, even if you've been a stay-at-home parent for 10 years. And, the other parent's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do 50-50. I don't know if it's in the best interest of the child. And it may not be. And that's the issue. But if you're in that situation, you got to carve out your physical space. Hopefully you have an apartment or a home that you could have separate bedrooms or separate zones. And if you can't do that, and especially if you work from home, you might have to get an office, in one of those co-working spaces. So you can carve out the home or carve up the home during this transition period. You can use a child specialist to help you through that process, but it's going to be a challenge until you get that parenting plan and then things sort of fall into place. Another thing that might be more important for more people is this digital boundaries. We carry our phones everywhere. And imagine this, you're having a nice day, maybe with the children, out with some friends. Maybe you're at the Children's Museum and you get a text from your soon-to-be ex that just is nasty. It's unnecessary. And it puts you in a foul mood. Right? So how do you prevent that where they have immediate access to you? Well, let me give you some ideas. First, you can use a co-parenting app, if they agree to use it. But a co-parenting app is great because it's not your text. You will check in. You have to affirmatively check in on these co-parenting apps. Another idea is to use email unless it's an emergency, and you can use labels and filters so you don't have to see them on your inbox. It can automatically be forwarded to maybe a different email address if they won't use the address you want. Yeah, that's right. So they could, you can get this email and then you can set up a filter that will forward the email to another address or look at it at a certain time. Another thing you can do on your phone is you could have, first of all, you can have multiple phones, But if you don't want to spend that money, you could probably have different apps where you only look at that. So for example, you could have maybe 3 telephone lines or 2 telephone lines on the same phone, or 2 or 3 different ways of text messaging on your phone, that you only look at this text message to communicate with your spouse. So you're sort of being proactive. So for example, let's say you put all your friends on WhatsApp, and then you only look at your text message maybe once a day, just to give you some peace of mind. A little tip I've seen is if you have an iCloud, one of those Apple devices, make sure you sign out of all your iCloud devices, because your spouse could be spying on you. I guess it is boundaries in the sense of spying, but it's something to think about. All right, so this is what is helpful. You got your physical boundaries, you got your digital boundaries all worked out. And, when you do this, what you're doing is you're giving yourself room to grow, to heal. Think of it like a garden, where you're putting a fence around a garden. You do that so people don't, trample all over the garden. You let it grow and blossom. And that's what boundaries are going to do for you. And it's very hard, if you're coming from this codependent relationship, to move into that. But that's what you're going to need to do if you're going to start on this journey, this post-divorce journey, where you are going to thrive. You are going to thrive if you can get past this, and you will get past this if you follow some of the strategies in this podcast and in my other podcast episodes. This is all about getting divorced without losing your mind. This is not necessarily all intuitive, and if it is intuitive, it's harder to do when you're so emotionally close to it. It's easy for professionals, for outsiders, to tell you what to do, but it's hard in that moment to do it. So keep on coming back to this, and think of yourself as, needing this protection, this space, so you can go to a different place. And that's the place I want to take you to. That's the place that's going to make you happier in your life. It's going to make your kids happier, and it's going to really set you up for future success. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind. I'm Corey Shapiro. I'm here to help you become more creative and less reactive in your divorce.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. We would love to hear your feedback. Send Corey an email to feedback@gettingdivorced.org. And if you've read his book, please consider leaving an Amazon review. This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.